Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Sunday, November 3rd, 2024 in the space and time continuum. We are less than 48 hours away. That's right, hours, not days. There are people who believe that the numbers reveal themselves, the election reveals itself 48 hours before Election Day. And wow, what a development last night. I want to start with that. I've got 2 pages of notes here. I started on October 29th. When was that? Tuesday, I think? And by the way, on Tuesday, I basically had to drop off the planet for at least a few hours, a half a day or so. I was feeling like back when I was a candidate and my whole life was just way too absorbed with campaign, door knocking. I was I was by myself. You know, I didn't have a big team. This was back 12 years ago now, and this was very red. Nobody had really ever campaigned out here. We might have had candidates, but nobody door knocked, Republican or Democrat. And I was working my ass off, and a couple times I just was kind of drove me crazy, literally, and I just had to drop out. And that happened to me on Tuesday evening. My brain was wiping out. I was feeling the anxiety. You know, I know you come on this show and I make you feel better, right? Or I try at least. And I make it sound like, hey, man, you don't have to be so scared. You don't have to have all this anxiety. It's scary. And we're getting so close now. And I was having flashes of 2016 and what if he actually does win? You know, we're so set and looking forward to being done with Trump and having Kamala as our president. And what if it doesn't turn out that way? It drove me crazy. And I see how it feels sometimes to get the mainstream media, get affected by them the way you and everybody does. And you know what made me feel better? You know, I thought I had to take a break from everything. Well, the next morning, I thought, okay, I'm going to be careful. Maybe I just need to watch comedy today while I'm at the shop working, instead of watching all of this political information on the election that I want to bring to you in the podcast. Maybe I need to take another day off and just, I don't know, watch. I was thinking of watching Mr. Mom, that movie, if you remember. And Terry Garr just died. Really sad. I love Terry Garr. She had MS, and she died this last week. She's in that movie, Mr. Mom, by the way. Anyway, wow. This is useless information so far. But I just wanted to let you know that, yes, I feel it too. I get the anxiety. But what made me feel better the next day was digging back in. Because the information is overwhelming. Not the information you get on CNN, but the information that exists and is ignored by mainstream media. Last night, there was an incredible event that happened. I realized I have heard of Ann Selzer before. I've seen her. I follow her on Twitter. So many names, I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together. I started to watch this breakdown of this guy that I've been keeping track of who does the maps. I told you last week I've been going and finding a lot more sources of information in order to do this show. This guy was doing a live thing, although I was watching it just maybe an hour later. So it had happened an hour before. I was watching this, and just as he started talking about Iowa, Heidi showed me something she found. That there is a poll in Iowa, the Des Moines Register newspaper published where Kamala Harris is ahead in Iowa by 3 points. And then I watched this guy, and he is a numbers geek, and he was losing his mind. So he and this other numbers geek, and I'm talking about deep numbers guys, they're waiting for the moment that this poll is going to be published. Heidi shows me the results of this, and I don't really know what's going on because I didn't know this was going to happen. I guess I'm luckily maybe not as much of a geek as these guys are. And they were watching and they were talking to each other, and it was coming up to 6:59 p.m. And this poll was going to be announcannounced right to the second by the Des Moines Register newspaper. Right at 7 p.m., this poll was going to be published. These guys are going, okay, it's 6:59. I'm thinking you're right. I'm thinking it's going to be Trump up 9. But I feel like maybe it might be Trump up 8. This is the gold standard polling in Iowa. They call the caucuses accurately all the time, almost right to the number. Trump was ahead of Biden in this poll in the summertime by 18 points. So these guys were saying, well, he's not going to be that much ahead of Kamala. I say he's going to be 8 or 9 points ahead. It gets published, and these guys are like, okay, that's fake. That can't be fake. Okay, we got to find this elsewhere. They're scrambling because they're looking online to find the results because they don't believe them. At first they said, oh my God, it's only within 3 points. She's within 3 points of him. And they're like, wait, no, she's ahead. She's ahead by 3 points. And I watched these guys' minds blow. I thought the guy was going to cry. He was freaking out. I mean, really freaking out. And he's saying, okay, so this is Iowa. This is a 12-point shift from what they were thinking. So he's saying, okay, if this is a 12-point shift, then let's go into other states because Iowa has a lot of rural counties. So is this a bellwether for the country? And this guy's mind was being blown. So he goes through and he changes his map. And this guy, I think this guy's really accurate. And I went through some detail of him last week where he's like, my numbers could be off by 0.5%. Therefore, Kamala could be ahead in North Carolina instead of behind. That's how the results could come out. Very well could go that direction. So, he's very reasonable, and he's trying to make a prediction by studying the good polls and considering those, not the now over 100 Republican-leaning polls. And he's very careful about what he considers. So he's thinking, okay, how do I change my map? If this is a bellwether, if Iowa, so goes Iowa, so goes the country, how would I change? And he went through and he changed the states that were within 12, and he ends up with, I wrote it down here, 425 electoral votes to 113 electoral votes, because that many more states would go toward Kamala. And he was doing this like, I can't believe this. I mean, I know this isn't going to happen, right? I mean, she's not going to win in Ohio, right? Is that possible? He's doing this on his live show. And he's just freaking out. Matthew Dowd says, folks, I am not saying Seltzer poll in Iowa is accurate with Harris up 3. But there has been various signs in Midwest red states of serious movement to Harris. She's down only 5 in Kansas, down only 3 in Ohio, and up 12 in Nebraska District 2. Something is going on. Now that, at the very least, is undeniable. Somebody else writes on Twitter, male pollster, tie game, we've adjusted for Trump. Male pollster, tie game, we've adjusted for Trump. Male pollster, tie game, we've adjusted for Trump. And then Ann Selzer, have you boys heard of Dobbs? Seth Abramson writes, Trump leading Harris by only 52% to 48% among the most likely voters in Alaska. So there is state polling that is crazy. Is Kamala Harris going to win Alaska? Probably not. But she's pulling it so close that, I don't know, maybe in 2028? This is how, speaking of me running in this district 12 years ago, and everyone thought I did such a great job when I got 38% of the vote. I only got 38% of the vote, and everyone was congratulating me. Nobody thought that was possible in this district back 12 years ago, and right now, Tracy Brazil is set to win. That's how things go. Breaking, new reporting from Georgia shows women accounting for 56% of voters. This is huge for Kamala Harris, of course. This is a net 52% swing to Harris for Puerto Rican voters in Florida from a previous October Telemundo poll. The racist comments and Puerto Rican outrage have fundamentally changed the election. It cannot be understated because a Newswire story came out. Harris leads Trump 85-8 among Florida Puerto Rican voters. They make up over 1 million people. Florida. Is she going to win Florida? People are freaking out all over the biosphere that I am in. They are freaking out all over the place about this poll and other polls. There's also a YouGov poll that came out that has her ahead 50-47 with asking 55,000 people. That's a big poll. There's another one that has 78,000 people, and she's ahead 51-47. She's ahead 4 points. Your poll is much more accurate when you're talking to 78,000 people than when you're talking to, 1,000. That an awful lot of polls is talking to maybe about 1,000 people. Now, there are some people also, everyone's talking about we got to win back the House. Otherwise, Mike Johnson is going to not certify the vote. And everyone's scared about that. Now, here's a woman that you may know who's always right about everything, especially having to do with the House of Representatives. This is Nancy Pelosi.
In 2022, people said to us, you're going to lose 30 or 40 seats. We said, no, we're not. I don't know who in New York or Washington, D.C. thinks that they know something. We're on the ground. We know that people care about a woman's right to choose, about the fate of our planet, about gun violence prevention, and about our democracy. And so we lost 5 seats in New York, which we hope we will pick up, and Hakeem will be Speaker. But people said at the time, you're putting too much emphasis on a woman's right to choose. I said, you know what? We know what we're doing. We're on the ground. We're listening to people. You may be predicting, we're listening.
That's her just today on the Jen Psaki show called Inside with Jen Psaki, a really, really good show. She's got great guests on all the time. And you heard her there say in 2022, everybody was saying that the Democrats were going to lose 40 seats. They lost 5 seats. And that's because the New York Democratic Party was just way off and not doing their job. Those seats are going to come back. So really, we wouldn't have lost any seats. She is saying Hakeem Jeffries is going to be the Speaker. We're going to win back the House. She's very confident, as is a lot of other people who are in Congress. The mainstream media wants you to think, oh, the Democrats, they're going to lose the Senate and they're not going to win back the House. So even if Kamala Harris wins, she can't do anything. Don't listen to that crap. This Des Moines Register poll, 47 for Kamala, 44 for Trump. Best pollster in America is what everybody calls Ann Selzer. She's the head of this polling. I saw a full interview with her today, and it's really interesting. People are saying, well, what's going on there? That's an outlier. Well, she's been called an outlier before, and then she ends up being correct on Election Day. She's a very humble person. She said, yeah, I'm more nervous than most people about Election Day because of this poll. I want this poll to be good, obviously, or I'm going to lose my whole reputation. And her reputation is impeccable. And that's not the only poll that's going that way. We're already out of time in the first half. What? I feel like I'm barely getting started. More to talk about the polls. Now, you've heard me obviously talk about polls and how you can't rely on them. Well, closer to Election Day, they get more and more legitimate, at least the handful that are legitimate. A lot of the polling averages are still including now over 100 of these bogus polls that lean toward the GOP to try and make it look like the Republicans have a chance or are winning. That's why you're hearing the mainstream media saying, oh, there's a big surge for Donald Trump. That's because more and more of these polls are being included in the polling averages. They want to make Trump feel like he's winning so that he has some confidence. You heard me last week, a lot of credible people talking about this is not going to be a close race. Not only is Kamala Harris going to win, it's going to be a blowout. I'm going to go through more of what that Iowa poll means. When we come back, let's take a short break here and come back, and I'll try and get to the many other things. It's very exciting. I'm really, really excited. I was depleted on last Tuesday. I just couldn't take it anymore leading up to the election. It's so scary and nerve-wracking, but I can't tell you how excited I am right now. It's really looking like the crazy stuff that you've heard me talk about that's optimistic but also sounding crazy. It's looking like that's going to be a reality. Day after tomorrow, I'm talking at you from Sunday. You might even be listening to this on Monday. Tomorrow, you might be listening to this on Tuesday. That's when this is all going to happen. We're going to find out. And I'm excited in a very, very good way. So I said we're going to take a break. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Satellite view. Todd Mikkelson speaking at you here from Sunday, November 3rd. That Seltzer poll in Iowa. This is what people were saying about what the results would be. You heard me talk about these two guys that were predicting 8 or 9 in favor of Trump, which would have meant, quote unquote, good for Trump. If Trump got plus 11 or higher, it would be a Trump wipeout. These people are seriously talking about that this is a bellwether, canary in a coal mine kind of situation where this Iowa poll, a lot of people are speculating, so goes this poll, so goes Iowa, so goes the country. So here's what they were saying. If this poll had Trump plus 11 or higher, the whole election would be a Trump wipeout. If Trump is plus 9 or plus 10, that's really good for Trump. If Trump is plus 7 or plus 9, it's going to be a close election on razor's edge. If Trump is ahead, plus 5 to plus 6, that's a really good sign for Kamala. If Trump is ahead by 4 or less, this election is going to be a Harris wipeout. And the results are Kamala Harris is ahead of Trump by 3. Okay? I'm trying to emphasize the weight of this. Okay, Nick Field says, to casual observers, I really can't emphasize enough how election nerds like myself consider this the poll of polls. It caught Obama's 2008 caucus rise and Trump's upsets in 2016 and 2020. The results seem too good to prove, and yet, here we are. This Seltzer poll, everyone thought she was going to be wrong in 2020 because she said, no, Biden's not going to win by that much because everyone thought Biden was going to do better. This Seltzer poll turned out to be correct. Everyone else, incorrect. Here's a summary. Democrat Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump in Iowa 47-44. A new Des Moines Register Mediacom Iowa poll shows. That's what I'm talking about when I say the Seltzer poll. A victory for Harris would be a shocking development after Iowa has swung aggressively to the right in recent elections, delivering Trump solid victories in 16 and 20. The poll shows that women, particularly those who are older or are politically independent, are driving the late shift toward Harris. Harris holds a small lead with likely Iowa voters who are younger than 35. Harris's larger support among likely voters 65 and older who prefer her 55 to 36 could be a boon. A boon. Because older Iowans tend to be more reliable voters. That's different than in the past. There's so much more information. I'm maybe spending too much time on this particular poll, but everyone is freaking out about this. At the same time, the Trump campaign and Trump himself is making it worse and worse for his chances. Last Sunday night, only a week ago, was the Trump Nazi rally. Yes, I'm calling it a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden, similar to the Nazi rally from 1939. Stephen Miller, I'm surprised he didn't insist that it was only filmed in black and white and didn't insist on all the speakers wearing uniforms. But he got up and said blatant Nazi types of things. And of course, this is where Puerto Rican voters, and Puerto Ricans in general, were insulted by this idiotic comedian who, I've seen other things of that guy, and I don't consider him a comedian because comedians are supposed to be funny. And the reason I think that is because I do have a sense of humor. My sense of humor can sense when things are stupid instead of funny. Anyway, here's what Simon Rosenberg has to say. I found this really interesting. It's something different than what everyone else is saying, but here's what he has to say.
The significance of what happened with this sort of insult to Puerto Ricans and then this wild explosion of Puerto Rican leaders, both in the mainland United States and in Puerto Rico, responding to it. Because there's been response in both English and Spanish, and this is important. Yes, it's going to hurt them in places like Pennsylvania that have large Puerto Rican populations and in Florida, because it was just so extraordinary. But it's also going to hurt them with all voters who consume Spanish language media. And so it's going to matter in Arizona and Nevada too. It's going to matter in Florida and Texas too, because this is a Spanish language story. Puerto Rico is the only part of the United States that Spanish is the primary language. And so the governmental response coming from the government of Puerto Rico and leaders in Puerto Rico itself are coming out in Spanish. And what happens, and I've done a lot of work in Spanish language media, what happens is that stories where you have to translate from English and you have, Anglo figures that nobody knows who they are, those stories don't, they put them on the news, but they don't really move people. This stuff is a week out. It's the presidential election. It's the two parties. It's the confirmation that Donald Trump is a rapist. Is a racist and a xenophobe and a bigot and all the things that he is. This is going to affect a lot more than just the Puerto Rican community. It is a titanic error at the end of the election.
This is a big mistake. It could turn the election, is what a lot of people think. Also, at that, they insulted women. They insulted African Americans. There was a watermelon joke, if you can believe it. It's like the 1950s or something. Yeah, a huge, huge, huge gaffe. And then you also now have Donald Trump doing and I'm going to protect the women, whether they like it or not. You know how much of an insult? It's like, I'm coming in to protect you. Let me in. Let me in. If you don't open this door, I'm going to knock it down because I need to come in and protect you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to throw my body on top of you and protect you from whatever it is. Let me in. I'm here to protect you, whether you want me. It's violence against women. You're violating them and you're insulting them. They know what they need, and if they don't want it, then that's not your choice. Again, here's what Tim Walz has to say.
And by doing this now, we have 20 states, including Arizona, that have Trump abortion bans in place. And now this week, he tells us he's going to put RFK Jr. in charge of women's health. Yeah, but he even made it a little clearer for you. Donald himself said, don't worry, he'll be your protector. Can't even open the door of a garbage truck, and let alone so. Well, look, he followed up in the last day or so and said he's going to do that whether women like it or not. So some of this stuff might be comedy fodder if this guy would go back to just being a buffoon on TV, but he's not. He's asking to be president of the United States again. And so because of that, now what we're seeing, what he means is women are turned away from emergency rooms and miscarriaging in parking lots, whether they like it or not. Survivors of rape and incest are being forced to carry those pregnancies to term, whether they like it or not. Fertility clinics have turned couples away at the door, whether they like it or not. And for so many of you out here, and for the women here certainly, it's personal. On the fertility side, Gwen and I have talked about our struggle with this. We struggled for years with infertility. Because we had insurance and fertility treatments, we had our beautiful family. I will be damned if anyone will take that from anybody in this country.
And here's what Charlie Kirk has to say about women. Charlie Kirk is a leader of whatever stupid group he's Turning Point USA. He supposedly is the representative of the young college Republicans. And here's what he has to say about women voting in the voting booth, voting for Kamala Harris without telling their husbands.
And she needs people to basically lie to their husbands, which they are promoting, by the way, which I find that entire advertising campaign so repulsive. It is so disastrous. It is the embodiment of the downfall of the American family. I think it's so gross. I think it's so just nauseating where this wife is wearing you'll show it, wearing the American hat. She's coming in with her sweet husband who probably works his tail off to make sure that she can go, and have a nice life and provides for the family. And then she lies to him saying, oh yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump. And then she votes for Kamala Harris as her little secret in the voting booth. Kamala Harris and her team believe that there will be millions of women that undermine their husbands and do so in a way that it's not detectable in the polling.
All right. That's what he thinks about women. The ad they're talking about, Kamala Harris campaign put out an ad. A woman comes in with her husband. She goes, she votes for Kamala, and then she comes out and her husband goes, did you make the right choice? And she's like, yep. And they're showing women, you don't need to tell your husband. Your vote is your vote. And indeed, I couldn't believe this when I heard this. These are things that they're asking people. And they're finding out that 1 in 8 women are voting for Kamala Harris and not telling their husband about it at the polls. What? What Charlie Kirk said here, they believe millions of women are going to do that. That is millions of women. That adds up. And women are overwhelmingly voting above men. In Georgia, in 2020, they had less than 5 million votes total, the whole election cycle. Yet already now, 4 million have voted. So almost as many as voted in the whole election cycle of 2020 have already voted. And Kamala comes out 19 to 29 points ahead in the exit polling of these early and mail-in votes. In one state, she's ahead 59 to 40. Another one, 62 to 33. In Pennsylvania, they're asking late deciders, and now they're turning overwhelmingly on the low side, 17% toward Kamala, on the high side, 35% to Kamala. That includes places like Pennsylvania. So the late deciders are going toward Kamala. Here's another thing. Even though you heard that more registered Republicans are voting in early voting, she's still ahead. Early North Carolina, 50 to 47% in favor of Kamala Harris, even though more Republicans have voted. That means she's getting Republicans to vote for her, and she's overwhelmingly winning the independent vote. That's what that says. Unaffiliated. There are states where they're called unaffiliated. It's sounding like the unaffiliated and the independent voters are overwhelmingly choosing Kamala Harris, and a large portion of Republicans. Those Republican women, those women who aren't telling their husbands, are very likely, if not 100% sure, registered Republicans. They want their husband to think they're a Republican, so they're a registered Republican. Secretly voting for Kamala Harris. There was one woman I think I told this story 1 or 2 weeks ago, an 81-year-old woman, her husband died, and she was happy because she could vote. He wouldn't allow her to vote. And now he's dead. And she's happy because she wanted to vote for Kamala Harris. So again, we go to being a normal person. You're not crazy. When you see, everyone saying, how can it be that this election is so close? Trump is crazy. His people are crazy. Oh my God, there's an article. It was incredible. Talking about his campaign is completely off the rails. People are trying to blame each other in the campaign for when he loses, because they all know he's going to lose. This new YouGov, 55,000 registered voters. There's another YouGov that has 78,000. These are putting Texas and Florida only in the leaning R. It's incredible. I mean, it's incredible. So you're not crazy. This isn't a close election. Kamala Harris is going to sweep this. It's going to be a sweep. It's going to be a landslide. I stick to that she's going to win the popular vote by more than 11 million. 11 million votes in the popular vote. I stick with that she will get more than 300 electoral votes. I think she'll get a minimum of 319 electoral votes. The closest this election will come is her at 319 and him at 219 in the electoral votes, which is what counts. That's the minimum. I'm predicting. There are people who know more about this than I do who are talking about the possibility of her getting more than 400 electoral votes. You see all these celebrities supporting her, putting their reputations on the line. Most of these people don't want to get involved in politics, but this time they are because it's so urgent. Trump has a couple celebrities, but they're all like weird losers. Kamala's got the most popular celebrities in the world backing her, rallying with her, door knocking for her, and the excitement of her rallies last night. It was, again, just insane. I don't have numbers of how many attendees, but you watch these clips and the crowds are so loud. It's just incredible. And Donald Trump, they close off the top section of wherever he is, and they can't fill the bottom section. And he's just kind of talking like this, and people are leaving. And you're thinking to yourself, how can this election be so close? It's not. You're not crazy. At the last minute, here's what Han Solo has to say.
Look, I've been voting for 64 years. Never really wanted to talk about it very much. But when dozens of former members of the Trump administration are sounding alarms, saying, for God's sake, don't do this again, you have to pay attention. They're telling us something important. These aren't soft people. They're governors, generals, standing up against the leader of the party they spent their lives advocating for. For many of them, this will be the first time they've ever voted for someone who doesn't have an R next to their name, because they know this really matters. The truth is this: Kamala Harris will protect your right to disagree with her about policies or ideas, and then, as we have done for centuries, we'll debate them. We'll work on them together. and will move forward. The other guy, he demands unquestioning loyalty, says he wants revenge. I'm Harrison Ford. I've got one vote, same as anyone else, and I'm going to use it to move forward. I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris.
All right, that's Indiana Jones. That's Han Solo. You're not crazy in thinking, I don't know. According to what I'm seeing and perceiving of what's going on, it seems like she's going to overwhelmingly win. There's that point of that Trump's own people are trying to warn us because he's unfit. There's the point that the Republicans will make abortion illegal in the country. That issue is not cooling down ever. We're hearing more and more horrific stories about women dying just because of the Trump and Republican abortion bans in some states, especially Texas. And those are only the stories that we're hearing about. Women are dying, and they have been dying for a couple of years already. You think they care less now? Something like that never cools down. That alone, I've been saying it, and I'm not the only one. You've been thinking it. That seems like that issue alone is going to win the White House for the Democrats. Even if my dog Tucker is our candidate over Trump. Not only did we have Joe Biden, who I believe still would win a lot because of this issue, now we have Kamala Harris, who's run a flawless campaign. She's the most stellar candidate any of us have ever seen. She was on Saturday Night Live last night. Her people on her plane said, no, we're not going there. We're going to New York. And they're like, what? And then she appears on a live television show just a little more than 48 hours before Election Day, when this election is revealing itself. And I told you about that poll. And a lot of people who know a lot about this think that that poll is a bellwether, meaning the way Iowa goes, the way the country goes. That poll is showing us what's going to happen. That's what they think. That's what I've been feeling. And that's what you've been feeling and thinking. You know it. Deep down inside, you're like, I don't know. It seems to me like Kamala Harris should be over. She's going to get like 75% of all of everything. I mean, am I crazy? No, you're not. You're not crazy. Now, of course, it's going to be scary as hell on Election Day. North Carolina is a state that I feel very strongly she's going to win. They call it early because the polls close a little bit early. It may be possibly the first state that is called on election night. And a lot of people, again, are saying that's another sort of bellwether. If she wins North Carolina and it's kind of the first state, then we're going to see the dominoes falling in her direction for the rest of the night. I think it's going to be called. It's not going to be confirmed. It's not going to be ratified for a couple days because the counting has to go on. The counting will go on for a few days after Election Day. So the actual final number won't be revealed until days later. But I think she's going to be called the winner of the race because of the counting that is finished by midnight Eastern time. I stick with that prediction as well. So we're almost through it. I know it's going to be scary. I almost feel like I can't tell you to just relax and feel good because that's kind of impossible. But I'm excited in a very positive way about this. And all the things that happened in 2016, the whole world is different now. Next week, we'll probably start to talk about what Trump is trying to do to shut down the results and blah, 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 blah. We're way more ready for all of that than we were. There's really nothing to be scared of. He doesn't have that kind of power anymore. And he's not going to gain it on election day. And I'm telling you, everyone says she has to win this overwhelmingly so that Trump can't make people think it was rigged. She is going to win it overwhelmingly. Last night was crazy. Everyone has been going crazy this weekend in a positive way. That's what's going on. All right, just stop watching CNN. Although they have covered their asses already by saying this is going to be a blowout. They just didn't commit to which direction it was going to be. But they have said this could be a blowout so that they can cover their ass after Election Day and say, hey, we told you it was going to be a blowout. Because it's going to be a blowout. All right. I'm way over time as usual, and I want to get this edited and out to you. I'm going to try and get it out tonight instead of introducing it to you tomorrow morning. I'm very excited, as you can tell. You should be too. Try and enjoy it. I know it's going to be nerve-wracking and maybe even scary, but you do not need to be scared. Here's another prediction. I think you're going to enjoy Election Day. I think you're going to enjoy Election evening. Thank you so much for listening. We've come this far together, and I think we're doing all right. Next time I talk to you, we will have President-elect Kamala Harris. Again, thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.